Hey folks, this is Hal Shurtleff with Camp Constitution. And last week I learned about a documentary entitled The Fall of Minneapolis. And I'm going to use the screen share to bring it up, the website of the entity. Here we go. The lady who produced the documentary is Liz Holland. And Liz was a journalist, investigative reporter or journalist in Minneapolis, and she lost her job over reporting on the George Floyd issue back in 2020. And she wrote a book, and the book here, let me scroll down a little bit, which I've not read, by the way. The book is called They're Lying, and it's called the Setting the Record Straight based on conversations with those who were there, including Derek Chauvin, Thomas Lane, and other Minneapolis police officers who were never spoken up before. Liz exposed the facts were manipulated to dupe and divide America. And so I believe it was Newsmax, and the same day, this within a short time, I think I saw her interviewed on Fox News as well. I can't remember which show. And I think I heard her on a radio show, a Boston area radio show. Now, back in 2020, prior to the George Floyd death, it was interesting. The lockdown was sort of the mask mandates were I think issued in early May by most governors, mostly left wing governors around the country, and Minnesota, of course, being one of them. And I remember hearing about the heroic first responders, the police. There was goodwill. Um, the police were heroes. They were responding to this. They were doing a great job. They were helping people, et cetera, et cetera. Then a switch went off. Okay, time to pull the switch. And overnight, the police all over the country were evil and bad. And every single policeman, especially if he was a white policeman, was somehow responsible for George Floyd's death. Vividly recall, I used to live in West Roxbury, it's a section of Boston. Uh, and in fact, a lot of policemen live in West Roxbury. And what happened was, was on the main road, and there was a police cruiser in front of me, and there was a guy that crossed the street and stopped. The light when it's green, and he just stopped and right in front of the police and just giving the cops a bad look. And the cops were very okay. You made your point. Now move along. They didn't get out, didn't say anything to him. But the jerk was there for about 2 or 3 minutes, holding traffic up. I thought something's really wrong with people. The way that this brainwashing is so prevalent. Mayors across this country, governors across the country, they were telling us we can't go out, we can't go to church, we can't go to the grocery store unless you wear a mask and wait in long lines and stay 6 feet apart, etc. But if you want to go out and protest, you're welcome to. Then they started passing this. The city of Boston was one about over 100 cities that said that racism was a medical health issue in the city of Boston. Ironically, the city of Boston hasn't had a Republican mayor since the early 30s. So I guess it was a Democrat, and it was all these Democrat cities. Then the rioting broke out. We were told there was one particular report, and you'll see a clip of that in this documentary, The Fall of Minneapolis. You'd see a reporter saying the protests have been mainly peaceful. In the background, buildings are burning. Dozens of people were killed, and most of whom were black, by the way, killed by other blacks. I know there was I think it was a Wendy's in Georgia, near Atlanta or in Atlanta, where there was an incident, and the guy came back and burnt the place to the ground. He ran over a couple little black children, I think killed them, if I'm not mistaken. It was just ugly. And I've never seen so much cowardice. Corporate America, I remember getting all these emails, Black Lives Matter. We have to support You can't ever even say white lives matter. You can't say all lives matter. People were losing their jobs, and it just went on and on. It was just a tough time. Uh, all of these people were turning on America. Sports athletes were, and most people saw what they thought was this police officer, Derek Chauvin, kneeling on Floyd's neck. Now, most of America did not see a lot of the footage, which was denied even in the court, as this documentary points out. And at a particular glance, it looked like this guy had his Derek Chauvin had his knee on the neck, but at other angles, it looked like the knee was not on the neck. It was close to the neck, but not on the neck. The first autopsy said that he died of fentanyl overdose. He had hypertension. He had one of his arteries was messed up, blocked, and he didn't die of asphyxiation. And then the family said, "We're going to do our own." Oh yeah, he died of asphyxiation. It's obvious. So the autopsy that the family paid for was the one that was used, and then the three other police officers involved in the call were all went to jail for accessory to the second degree murder. Second degree murder. Now the policeman that was the initial policeman on the spot, he was a convenience store, and Floyd was passing some bad money, counterfeit money. It was obviously because the store clerk called, and Floyd was, I believe, parked across the street. So the cruiser shows up across the street, and he did use some bad language. He probably shouldn't have done that. He used the F word and all that, but he shouldn't have done that. The police officer was half black. We didn't know that either. I just found this out. White mother, black father. Why wasn't he considered why was he considered a white cop? Obama has a white mother and a black father. He's not called a white president. Our vice president, Harris, who, by the way, raised money or helped to raise money for the Minneapolis rioters, one of which was paroled and then were bailed out and went out and murdered somebody. She has her mother is from India and the father is from the Caribbean, and she's considered a black vice president, not an Indian vice president. But anyway, and there was another policeman who was Asian, a member of the Hmong community, HMONG community. And some of us heard about that, but it didn't seem to make any difference. And even if the officer Chauvin was guilty of manslaughter or acting inappropriately, there was absolutely no evidence to suggest he had any racial motive. It's not like he woke up living in one of the most left-wing cities in the country. He said, "I want to do some damage to a black man today. That's what I live for." But nevertheless, the narrative was a racist white cop murdered this poor dear of a man. Now, it's a shame that he died. He shouldn't have died, but if you look at all the footage, a lot of it was denied. There's a guy on trial basically for his life, and evidence was not allowed to be brought in. The judge, of course, being a leftist Democrat, wanted this guy to fall. I remember the O'Reilly factor. That's the Bill O'Reilly, the former of Fox News, and he reported that he has to go down. It's too bad, but in other words, we have to placate the mob. Whether he's innocent or guilty is irrelevant. He needs to be found guilty and go to jail for the rest of his life, if not, for many years, if not the rest of his life. Nothing short of a conviction will placate the mob. They still won't be placated, but temporarily they'll be placated. You had elected officials demanding a guilty verdict, just like they did with Kyle Rittenhouse, going to the courthouse, outside the courthouse, demanding that is not what America's supposed to be about. Okay, whether you like the guy or not, you look at the facts and all the facts, all the evidence, and a lot of it was denied. And one of the things was this police chief who lied, according to Chauvin's mother. She said, she's in this documentary. She said, "I have Derek's training manual," and she had the page number, and it actually shows what he did was a method of keeping people secure, and it was approved. And they had another man he was retired, and he was able to speak out. He said, "I arrested Floyd a year before, and Floyd some of the same things." He said, he said, "Don't shoot me, guys. I'm not going to shoot you." And incidentally, the first officer on the scene, Floyd was not cooperative. He put him in cuffs. and Floyd was, he knew that, and he obviously seemed to be high. He was on drugs or on something, and he said I'm claustrophobic. He said he mentioned his mother that she was still around. She had died 2 years sooner. He said, I last time I was arrested, I was shot at. He was never shot at. That's a lie. And he said, I can't breathe while they were trying to get him in the cruiser. And there were people, there was one bystander that said, get in the cruiser, cooperate with him. And he refused to. He wanted to get on the ground. They put him on the ground. He's kicking people. They were his cuff, but he's kicking. He so and then Derek was the one that actually put his knee on his back and waited. They called 911. I'm sorry, they called an ambulance. Now the ambulance took a long time to come, and that was not the fault of. And then by the time the time they put him in ambulance, he was dead on arrival. And again, it was racist white cop did this, and this caused so much damage and defund the police. And the cowardly mayor of Minneapolis catered to the mob. The cowardly mayor of Boston, Mayor Marty Walsh, uh, deferred to the mob. Defund the police, and it was happening in all these cities around the country. And now the crime rate is off the chart. And actually, in this documentary, in fact, on the website, which by the way, the documentary is available free of charge. There is no fee. But here, I wanted to just show the crime statistics here. Here was, and by the way, I've been to Minneapolis. I used to go out there maybe once every 2 months for a couple of years, for at least a year. So I had maybe five trips out there in the general. And I was never a big fan of Minneapolis. I preferred St. Paul. It's a little sister city on the other side of the Mississippi. But here was 2019 gunshot wound victims 266. 2020 it doubled on off over 100%. And then 21 it was even higher. And what was happening is that a lot of the police officers were retiring early. Some of them just quit, or they just left and went to police station, the police departments where the cities or towns don't hate the police. Uh, and then in 2022 it went down a little bit. Carjackings 101 in 19, and it almost went up 300%, 300 to 388 in 2020, and now 2021. I mean, it just skyrocketed, stabilized just a little bit, and they'll say, "Oh, the crime is going down." We only had 524 carjackings when in 2019. We had about 400 less, but in homicides, 48. And Minneapolis is a city that's about the size of Boston population wise, 600,000 or so. So 48 homicides, and it almost doubled in 2020, and it kept on going. It went down a little bit in 2022. But this is what happens when you don't have a police force, when you have police chief that doesn't have your back, when you have a mayor that doesn't have your back, a governor doesn't have your back, and the population at large that doesn't have the police officers back. And they interviewed a lady police officer who she loved her job. She loved doing what she did. And she actually was crying in that. She just said it's such a different attitude. The city has changed. It's no longer the city that you can enjoy living in. There's fear and there's hostility. And that's all because of the left-wing narrative that was a lie. And interestingly enough, this documentary's been out about a week and a half. Just a few days ago, Derek Chauvin, who's in a federal penitentiary in Arizona, was brutally stabbed, and we don't know if he survived. He's supposed to have been stable. I just checked today, but there's not a lot of information. Gee, I wonder if this has something to do with it. The fact that he and his fellow officers can be totally exonerated by this documentary. The U.S. Supreme Court just denied his appeal. I think they're afraid, well, if he gets out, there'll be more riots. So even though a potentially innocent person is in jail, we have to, well, it's too bad, but hey, we have to placate. So we have to placate the mob. Well, I tell you, you cannot ever placate the mob. So I strongly recommend The Fall of Minneapolis. I watched it when it came out. And again, the website is simply thefallofminneapolis.com, and it's a free online. They do ask for donations. It was a crowd-funded video. So again, I strongly recommend not only that you play it, but share it with other people, share it on social media, email it, get it to elected officials. That's where they should go, all over the country, and let them talk about it. And you know that the leftists and the media are going to, gaslight it, and that's fine because then more people will watch it and say, "Oh, they're still lying to us." Anyway, I want to thank you, Camp Constitution. Please visit our website, campconstitution.net.